What a difference a day makes. 24 little hours. I can't believe I started doing that. 24 little hours, guys, and look where we are back here. Me singing terribly. And Manchester City Football Club, allegedly, the favourite choice and in for one of the best strikers in world football, Mr. Harold Edward Kane, MBE, could be joining Manchester City this summer. It might not happen, but it possibly could. And if there's anything worth starting a video for with me singing, it possibly could be this thing, because it's a very, 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 very big deal, regardless of what any of us think about Harry Kane. This is it's a big story, man. It's a very big story. And of course, there's only one person we need alongside me for this. Obviously, the connected one, the 9321, Mr. Ahsan Naeem. Good morning, my friend. How you doing, man?
I'm rather excited, I have to be honest with you. That's probably the best way for me to describe it. Yeah, we had a discussion last night on Twitter. My vibe is pretty apparent. I've said all along I love Harry Kane. I think that he's an unbelievable footballer, and I think that it would be cruel to put him in this City team under Guardiola. It really,
that's a very fair statement.
Somebody made me do it, and I did it. Go and have a look at his assist highlights from this season. Like, he's throwing in Kevin De Bruyne-esque passes for his assists. You can totally see why, if there's a missing piece in this team and it ain't a left back, then it's a number 9 like that, who can be a killer in the box, but who can also do all the football stuff outside the box.
You're right, man. You're right. He's absolutely incredible. And obviously, last night on Twitter, we had not a difference of opinion, I guess, really just a debate about Harry Kane in general. One thing I will say, the caveat for me always is that he's clearly absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to deny that ever. It's things basically, my stance on Harry Kane is he's brilliant. He's brilliant. I don't love him personally. I always wonder why. And the way I open it, and I'll get onto that in a bit, because I don't really think we need me crushing down this interesting bit at the moment. But I'll get onto that, maybe 10 minutes from now when we're a little bit more into it. But I guess my stance is more. I guess it's more kind of torn, which is possibly a little bit naive from me. And maybe it shows in a way how I'm potentially a little bit spoiled by City being brilliant. That another brilliant player. I feel like I can be choosy about the brilliant players I want, if that makes sense. So maybe there's an element of I've been spoiled a little bit. But I mean, one thing's for certain is that you're right. It's almost a cheat code. Harry Kane at Manchester City is potentially a cheat code. I mean, I actually sat this morning and watched an 8-minute compilation video of all his passes and goals this season. And one thing is very apparent, if you need to remind yourself just how good Harry Kane is, because sometimes you do need to remind yourself of a player that's not your own, just how good they are. He's brilliant. He's absolutely incredible. It's the vision. I mean, he's not the most elegant player to watch in the world in terms of he's quite hunched and he doesn't look graceful the way Foden does, but his technical ability is absolutely immense. Some of the passes that I feel like he's just started to do it more, playing to Son in particular with those runs in behind. And you got to bear in mind that could be Son. It could be Foden. It could be Sterling. It could be anyone. It could be Ferran Torres or something like that. It was very similar to Son, in my opinion, personally. But anyway, someone like that, then linked with Kevin De Bruyne and all that, and then watching his finishing, his long range finishes, and his headers and all that kind of stuff, you're like, he's clearly a missing piece. One of a few options clearly, but there's absolutely no doubt, for at least 2 years, that he'd be very, very settled for Manchester City. To go through this story, by the way, so if people are watching this and going, where the hell has this come from right now? Basically, last night it broke, and I personally have a little bit of insight onto this, which is rare. But it broke last night in the papers that Harry Kane has told Spurs that he wants to leave Spurs and possibly join someone else, maybe Man City. But either way, he's told them he wants to leave. And the most interesting thing about this is that Spurs did actually issue a rebuke through the press. So they didn't deny it. They went, everyone's focusing on the end of the season because we've got stuff to do, basically. So the fact that they issued a statement, even if it was just a journalist, to me was very, very telling. And now there's been loads of think pieces this morning, and one particular deep dive from Jack Pitbrook and David Ornstein about Harry Kane wanting to leave over the Athletic, which I read as well this morning. So it's real, this, guys. Basically, it's real. The intentions are clearly for Harry Kane to get a move this summer. Whether it's going to happen, we're going to debate that inside the next, I don't know how many minutes. But either way, the intention is real. Now, What do you think the significance is this is coming out right now, Ahsan? Because obviously the season isn't even over yet. I mean, why would Harry Kane put this out right now, in your personal opinion, as opposed to just maybe another 2 weeks from now?
The timing's a little bit weird, but I imagine that there's never a good time to tell a club that you want to leave. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that for all of Spurs' 14-word statement last night that they've got football to worry about, they haven't really. They're not going to be playing in the Champions League next season. So that, as far as Harry Kane is concerned, the conversation with regards what happens to Spurs is done for him. He's going to end the season having not won anything and knowing that next season he won't be playing Champions League football. So it's not, I'm not particularly shocked by the timing. I think they've gone early. And what I mean by that is that I would have expected that I've said this on videos with you, mate, that I expected first week of international, when everybody leaves to go to the Euros, I expected Kane to go right and to make it public and for it to be a big story. The fact that they've moved even before he leaves for the Euros and while he's still at Spurs, if I had to guess why, I would expect because the Ornstein and Jack Pitt-Brook story, and also I believe it's Matt Law at the Telegraph, his story, they both seem very well sourced and very, very detailed. Yeah, and one of those two stories says there was a clear conversation between Levy and Kane and his camp last summer where he expressed a desire to leave. City expressed an interest to sign him, and Levy said, "I'd like you to stay one more year." And Kane said, "I will stay one more year if you make it easy for me to leave next year." And that was more or less, I think it's Matt Law that had that detail that said that there's a gentleman's agreement between Levy and Kane that he can go this summer. So if that gentleman's agreement exists, then I imagine that thing that happened yesterday and also the thing that happened in The Athletic a few weeks ago is more just a shot across the bows of Daniel Levy, a little reminder that, hey, mate, we had an agreement and we're going to hold you to that now. So now what happens today in the next 48 hours, the next 72 hours, I imagine that Levy gets on the phone with Kane's agent and tells him what the fee will be. And I imagine that he has his first initial conversations with interested clubs.
I would agree with that, man. I would agree. My personal take on this is what I think is happening here is I think this is just not maybe emotional is not the right word, but I think it's an instinctive move from Kane's camp to essentially drive up this interest. Now, I've heard, I'm not usually one to be in the know, but I know a few people within the game, and occasionally I hear a little bit. And his agent is his brother. Still, he's had a few different ones, but at the moment his brother is his agent. And apparently, according to what I've heard, that agent's rep isn't particularly good. He's not known for being particularly savvy and a little bit. Not very great at the whole forward planning thing. Interesting enough, it's also the same agent as Zaha. Make of that what as you want. Basically two players in the middle of long-term contracts you possibly both want to move onwards. So Kane's got 3 years left on his contract, of a 6-year contract. So he's basically slightly locked down. And I've heard basically his brother's planted this in the press with the intention, of course, of causing this furore around Harry Kane to drive up that interest. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's doing this. It's probably a relatively sensible move if you want to turn the head of Manchester City, because it gives them something to pull at, and he will turn around, his camp could turn around and go, well, if you want me, I've just put the first feelers out there to make this potentially happen, And I wouldn't be surprised if Kane's camp's going, shit, what if they get Haaland or Andre Silva or Lukaku? Make sure we're at the front of the queue, Like they do these things for a reason, don't they? Like when these things leak in the press, they're not, there's normally an agenda behind it. And we know what the agenda behind it in this. Go on.
You don't do this without a clear destination in mind. I think that one of the reasons why I'm a bit more sure about this than you are, or that I feel it's a little bit more planned, is that you don't do what he's done unless somebody on the other side has said to you, we'll do it. If you begin the process, we'll do it. Because
that's the thing I would say. Well, to interrupt quickly, I do agree that that's definitely happened in terms of. I guess the point now is how, like, is it like City go, yeah, we're interested, or is it we are going to make this happen? That's the. I guess that's the level we're talking about, because I do believe that he's had the push from Man City's side to say, yeah, we go for it. But what I guess we'll say is, how serious is Man City's statement? As in, like, are they still keeping their options open, or have they decided Kane is the one? And if you go for it in the press, we'll go for you. Do you mean by that? Is like, is there more?
I totally get it. Yeah, I totally get it. So here's the way that I view that. I expect there'll be a conversation between Daniel Levy and Begarestain this week. And that will, to some extent, give City an idea of whether they can do Harry Kane this summer or not. And what I mean by that is City will have a valuation in mind. Now, I want people to not get focused on the idea of records or City haven't spent X, so why would they spend Y? Don't frame it like that. Look at it like this. City will have a valuation for Harry Kane. They will have told his agent, we've got a valuation, and this is around about where the valuation is. For us to get here, that's because the agent will have gone back to City or any other club, so not to keep it close to City, or any other club, and said, yeah, that's the ballpark within which he will leave. So let's do this. I think that now what has to happen is there has to be a conversation between Levy and an interested party where Levy basically reiterates what the agent said, which is, this is the ballpark. Let's begin this process. I think that if you pick up the phone and you call Daniel Levy and he says, well, the fee is X, and that X is 50 million more than was your valuation, you'll probably say to Daniel Levy, thanks, but we're out. That's not in our ballpark. See you later. And then the ball goes back to Harry Kane's court about whether that price can be driven down. But I don't think it closes other doors, and I don't think it means that it's guaranteed that we get Harry Kane. But I do think that Kane has made his move, and I don't think he's made his move blind. And I think that, and this is just an opinion, this is not fact. I think Daniel Levy has very good connections in the media. And I think that the media have built Daniel Levy up to be something very powerful and very important. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the clubs that are going to deal with him are much bigger than Spurs, have much more money than Spurs, and are fully aware of Spurs' financial situation and Harry Kane's personal desires. So you have to constantly balance the cheerleading of Harry Kane signed a 6-year deal and Daniel Levy's the most powerful man in football, therefore he's not going anywhere, with the reality of what Spurs are and what Kane's desires are.
No, I'm with you on that entirely. We all know even that Levy is not easy to deal with. We all know that, but he's not impossible. What I was saying, he's not impossible. I mean, otherwise Kyle Walker wouldn't have won this many Premier Leagues at Manchester City. Otherwise, Gareth Bale wouldn't have gone to Real Madrid, So even though it won't be easy, I mean, anyone would be a fool to think it'd be easy. It isn't impossible, One thing that is interesting in that article, the Athletic article in particular, they're convinced that Levy will tell Kane he's got to stay for another year. Now, obviously, that could be, once again, sourced via someone positive on Levy's side, So you never know. It's always like pinches of salt to take with it, You never know how much these things are bargaining tactics or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs will try and drive a very hard bargain, knowing that, it's a supply and demand thing. Though they have got their own caveats, admittedly, with the financial problems and so on. But this is supply and demand thing. Manchester City need a striker. Harry Kane wants to go, and they can be like, well, give us the fucking money. Show us the money. They can go full on Jerry Maguire with it and do that. And they have every right to say that for what it's worth. Having said that, I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs asked for an insane amount of money, but if it came to it, the deal would be a lot more, palatable. You know, it would probably be something like 135, where everyone would be like, okay, you know, Spurs are like, look at the money we just got, it's insane, and City are like, well, we've just got the best striker.
British transfer record.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
It'll be a British transfer record. It'll be that sort of thing. Let me ask you something, Steve, because I respect your opinion a lot, right? I look at all the players that Daniel Levy has sold, and something jumps out at me, right? And the thing that jumps out at me is who got ripped off. Which one of those deals can you point at and go, wow, Levy had them over a barrel and they overpaid? Like Kyle Walker can count his Premier League medals. City can count the number of games that Kyle Walker has been crucial.
Every penny. Worth
every penny. Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, those guys can count their European Cups and their La Ligas and go worth every penny. I think that I'm just curious. Like I want to know
you're right.
I get the deal is.
I get the gist now, and you're right, to be honest. It's not like he's ever ripping anyone off. You know, I actually agree. And I mean, the Bale ones, some Madristas would argue are slightly contentious, but I mean, Bale wouldn't disagree with his legacy there, and rightfully so. I mean, I feel like everyone outside of Madrid thinks Bale's been pretty successful at Madrid, whereas at Madrid, maybe they'd argue against it. But I mean, I feel that's I don't feel that that's on Bale. I feel like it's more circumstance and injuries. But at the moment, the money they spent for Bale wasn't unreasonable at that time, and I still maintain, looking back, probably wasn't unreasonable given success. I mean, but either way, we could argue about that forever. But it's not like they paid 200 million from him or anything like that. It wasn't, it wasn't insane. It was reasonable. And Kyle Walker, once again, reasonable. And I'm sure if Kane went, he would be a big success as well. So maybe there is this this air of mystery around Daniel Levy, which he's probably built and propagated himself because it plays into his hands. And I'm sure everyone's happy to sell the story of shrewd Spurs and Daniel Levy being a genius in the transfer market because it plays into Spurs' general vibe and reputation. But he's not that savvy. Let's be honest, man. He's not that savvy. Like, I mean, I would argue recently he's shown signs of naivety in terms of the way the Pochettino Mourinho stuff. I mean, that to me was someone just jumping like a fanboy at someone. And I'm not sure if it's you spoken to before, but apparently like when Daniel Levy was chatting to Mourinho, he was like a little child, dead giddy with excitement. So
All or Nothing. I watched All or Nothing, the Spurs version, and I was a little bit like that.
This is the great Daniel Levy.
Yeah, like it just reinforced the idea to me that like the whole Levy thing is a myth that's been built through the London press pack. That like you look at the guy and he's a bit meh. You look at the way that he looked at Mourinho, and you go, "You've just fired arguably one of the best coaches of his generation and hired a has-been on twice as much money to replace him. And now you're sat in front of him, starry-eyed." That's like, like Cheeky Begarestain, Ferran Soriano, the people who run Manchester City Football Club don't operate like that. And so for me, it's just a bit, I'm sorry, it's just the Levy thing. It gets under my skin a little bit because I'm just a bit like, where does the reputation come from?
I think we will. I think we all, regardless of what we've just said, we know he will try and ask for an awful lot of money. That's
of course. What do you think Kane's worth? What would you like? If I've put you in charge, right? You've got the checkbook. You're Begarestain. You get to set the budget. What's your upper limit? What you're not paying more than?
Well, I'd answer that with a slight. I guess maybe a perception thing. I don't think anyone in the world balks at and goes, "What the fuck are they doing?" If it's sub 150. I don't think anyone questions it. I think if City pay 140 for Harry Kane, everyone goes, yeah, he's Harry Kane. And that's what I will say. And I think you'd be surprised how often that kind of stuff really feeds into these kind of ideas. Like people go, yeah, well, that's pretty reasonable. There's still people haggling for something, an expensive asset at the end of the day. And I don't think anyone would. Personally, I need to get onto my views on Harry Kane in a minute because this very much weights it, because I can't help but go, yeah, but if I'm spending near 150 million, I want the guy who's going to be here for 10 years. I can't help but do that. It's just very much in the back of my head. But at the same time, I'm very much one of those guys who goes, I don't give a shit how much Man City spend because it ain't my money. So but then it's like we're inherently hypocritical because football fans are. So I'm full of contradictory statements here. So same time, I don't care if City spend 140 million a player. But at the same time, I do think it could be 10 years with someone else that I think could be a better deal. So, but having said that, go circular back to your answer. I don't think anyone questions if as long as it's less than 140, or I'd say 140. I mean, even that's a lot of money, but I think people would justify it. I personally think reasonable is 125 or something like that. That's what I think would be reasonable personally, given his age. And given the fact that it's it's an awful lot of money, it's a transfer record, and given the pandemic, given the fact that it nearly wipes out Spurs' debt to the Bank of England, given loads of circumstances, I think they would have had a blind if they get 125, 130 million for Harry Kane. Personally, Spurs, I think it's the best for everyone, But I don't know. What were you gonna say?
That's my
125 or something.
I don't think that Spurs will get more than 120 for him. I think that at the age that he's at. With all of the caveats that people were talking about last night, those are the things that moves the needle from 150 to 120, 125 for me. And I don't think that that's a particularly unreasonable fee. And actually, I think even from because I have to say that in principle, I'm with you, right? I would much rather sign the 21-year-old. That goes without saying, right? I prefer to not have the finished article, but to have a 21-year-old that you go, he's going to be in 2 years or 3 years the best centre forward in the world, and be excited about that. So in principle, I do agree with you. But what I would say, and I think that this is where maybe there was a little bit of cross wires last night in a lot of discussions that were happening, is I genuinely got the sense that a lot of people were going, he's not worth it, or that somehow the figures, even at 120, at 125, is inefficient spending, right? Like almost like a lot. I saw a lot of people saying things like, "Oh yeah, that's the kind of thing United would do. City would never do that." And I was just a little bit like, for me, from a talent or an ability point of view, City would absolutely do that, because he's not Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire was a very good centre-back, but he wasn't one of the top 3 centre-backs in the world. It wasn't a conversation about signing a player who is the best of the best. Do you understand what I mean? It was like we needed a centre-back. He was a very good centre-back, but there was an upper limit where they just went, well, we ain't paying that because we ain't paying that. End of conversation. Yeah. Whereas...
I've got a series of questions I want to ask you. I need to get a glass of water. I'll be very quick because the kitchen's just there. But I'm going to leave you with 2 questions very quickly. I just got a bit of a cough in my throat, so he's got a glass of water. 2 questions basically that follow on, and I can hear you because I've got my earphones in still. So I'm going to ask this first question, and then I'm going to come back for the second one. So the first question is, money's irrelevant, all this kind of stuff, and I'm talking purely on time because this waits the second question. If Harry Kane signs for Manchester City, how many top-class seasons do you think we get out of him, given his injuries and all that kind of stuff? That's what I want you to know. And I'm going to ask that for a reason, because then it frames my next question. So I want to know your honest opinion. How many top-class seasons do you think Manchester City get out of Harry Kane if he signs? I'm going to get that water. I can hear you.
Okay.
Go for it.
I don't think that it's... well, firstly, I've not got a crystal ball, and I'm not a psychic, so I can't tell you exactly how many we'll get, but I guess the question is connected to value, and I think that if you get 3 full seasons out of Harry Kane, between 3 and 5 full seasons out of Harry Kane, he's paid for himself. That would be my go on.
No, well, my actual question, interestingly, is not connected to value. It's connected to Haaland. Because I want to know, if you got 3 or 4 seasons out of Kane, would we be sat here going, I wish we'd signed Haaland instead in 3 or 4 years? That's what I want to know. Because basically, I'm thinking, imagine we get 3 seasons out of it and Haaland is at 22, 23, and he's already scoring 50 goals a season somewhere. Are we not sitting here going to go, we've missed the boat on that one? And that's what I'm getting at. Then we have to start the hunt again for someone else. Is that play into view at all? Because that's where my head's at, and I can't shake that feeling.
Football moves too quickly. Like, football just moves too quick. Do you know what I mean? A year ago, Haaland wasn't Haaland. A year ago, Mbappe was Haaland, right? And now Mbappe and Haaland are Mbappe and Haaland. Well, Foden, Mbappe and Haaland, or Foden, Mbappe
Yeah.
and Haaland. And then in another 2 years, there's a bunch of lads who are 16, 17 who'll be going on 19, 20, and one of them will be the new Mbappe Haaland. So
could beat the lap.
And you look inside the academy at City, and there is a lot of very talented players there. But I see why you're asking that question, and I understand it. I just think that it's important to. I like discussion before a transfer. I think it's interesting to kind of have both sides for want of a better phrase. But you should always have one eye on the idea that if you bring a player in, you won't his success or his failure will not be judged by his transfer fee, his contract, or his first 3 months at the football club. And you cannot succession plan. Like, a lot of supporters will go, we're going to sign him in 2 years, right? Football doesn't work like that. Clubs generally don't operate like. There are exceptions, but generally the way it works is City need a number 9 this summer. They're going to sign a 9 this summer, right?
If you don't sign him now, someone's going to sign him before 2 years is up. That's how it works. You can't wait for 2 years for a player because someone gets him first. It's just how it is.
Exactly. So I'm not. I know why you. Here's what I think, right? And let me flip it for you. You just asked me about Haaland in 3 years from now. Here's what I think. I think if City close Harry Kane this summer, Erling Haaland joins Bayern Munich next summer, or even Real Madrid or Barcelona, and 3 or 4 years from now, Mino Raiola's doing a Mino Raiola dance and trying to move Haaland to the next club, which will be in the Premier League because he wants to play in the Premier League. He's on record. He's on every record as saying that's where he wants to end up playing. So I'm all right. Like I don't fear. I said this on the video the other day. If we don't sign Haaland, he ain't coming to England because we'll sign somebody else. He'll look at it and he'll go, well, I'm not finishing second to City. I'll go and flat track Spain.
That's interesting. Germany that's interesting because I'm not sure. I'm quite as confident as that. I wonder if. Maybe you're right. I wonder once again. Football moves quickly, man. Who knows where Chelsea are in a year from now? Who knows where Man City are from a year from now? I guess I've just got an attachment as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've got attachment to the idea of this player coming to Man City. I'll get onto my not reservations because I tweeted last night that I am my summary on Kane is I'm cool if it happens, I'm cool if it not happens. And the reason I got to there is because I've essentially got my positives, negatives. And the positive is this, and I'm going to use the top of the screen. That's where Harry Kane is brilliant. So that's the top of the air on. He's absolutely amazing. But what I will say, pulls it down a tiny bit for me is his age. And then I'm like, okay, he's a bit older. I have slight injury concerns, and maybe I've been burned there by Sergio Aguero, because Aguero, unfortunately, is a great example of a generational, incredible striker whose injuries got more and more as he got older. And look, Aguero might not even get to say goodbye to us now on the pitch because his injuries are. And I guess that doesn't mean it's going to happen to Kane. I'm aware of that. But I can't help but think that because he's a strong recency bias and a strong example of a great player, who's been ruined towards a relatively early age these days by injuries. So I worry about that. It might not be true. I worry about that. And I guess there's a small part of me, it doesn't really like Harry Kane as a person. I can't really get past that, unfortunately. Someone said 27 isn't old, Stephen, by the way, but he'll be 28 next season. So it's worth pointing that out. He's 28 in the summer. So he's not old, ain't young is what I will say. Anyway, I think I'm also definitely, and I can hold my hands up and say I'm a little biased here, I slightly dislike Harry Kane, so I'm definitely a bit biased here, and mainly because I don't like the chopping thing he does in midair. I hate it with a passion, and I loved it when Fernand put his elbow on him because I thought it was fucking snidey. So basically, but that I must admit that's a very minor personal thing, and I guess one final thing would say is I guess I'm a little bit too romantic with football. And the idea of signing this guy who's a Man City fan to me just appeals, and I can't personally see, and this is my problem. I'm aware this is my problem, and if anyone would say you're being ridiculous, I would go, you're probably true there, but football, I would argue, is ridiculous. And we're talking about 100+ million footballers here, so of course it's inherently ridiculous anyway. So, but based on that whole ridiculous oversight, I guess I would argue that to me, Harry Kane will always be the Spurs guy, and I struggle with the idea of loving him in the way that I would love someone else because it's like, don't get me wrong, I would celebrate his goals. Of course I would. And I'm sure he'd be incredible with us. But like, I think maybe I might have reached the point now as a City fan where we've had it all and it feels so good that I just like the idea of someone becoming a star. And maybe it's why I'm attached to the idea of, like, Haaland's a star, don't get me wrong, but he's not who he's going to be yet, in my opinion. And I love the idea of the journey of a player, and that's a personal thing. And these don't mean anything. And what I will say, all these things are my opinion as a fan, not as a CEO or a sporting director. And if I was a sporting director, I wouldn't care about what I'm saying if I was a sporting director. So these are just my personal things. They're not things that matter. Like Harry Kane's slight tendency for a cynical foul and the fact that he's a Spurs guy doesn't matter to Manchester City, and rightfully so. And this is why I'm not running the club, But I'm just talking about as an individual. So what I'm saying basically, so starting up there is incredible. These little things just pull me down to the middle where I'm like, cool, if he comes, he's brilliant to score the goals. If it doesn't happen, well, I'm not emotionally attached to him anyways. I guess what I will say, and maybe that's because I've been a bit spoiled, and maybe because City have been great, and maybe because beggars, the whole beggars can't be choosers. But in this case, we're not the beggars, and maybe we can be choosers. So maybe I'm a little bit privileged, and I feel like City can choose. So. But for whatever reason, and I watched the video this morning to remind me how good he is. I'm like, and he's brilliant. And I'm like, why am I not excited by this? And I wonder if it's for those reasons. Now, they may be silly reasons, but I can't deny that as who I am as a football fan. It's just a personal thing, man. It's a personal thing. What were you going to say anyway, man? What do you think would make a difference?
Would it make a difference to you? So let's say that we sign Harry Kane and that afterwards Guardiola does an interview and they say, why didn't you sign Haaland? Would it make a difference if he said, we believe in Liam Delap and signing a player at 20, 21 years old to play that position, we just felt it would be blocking Delap's path and his development. Would that make a difference to you?
Mate, that would make the world of difference. Do I think that'll happen? Probably not. I mean, that would make a difference to me if I saw Delap in the first team next season playing games. Like, yeah, of course it would. Just would. There's no doubt about it. And that's what someone replied to me last night on Twitter saying, if we sign Kane, it doesn't belong Delap long term. And I'm like, that's not a bad point, I guess it depends if Kane's going to stay fit or not. Because if it does, it's 5 years, and Delap, he's not going to wait around 5 years. But yeah, if they said that, if they came out and said that. Having said, will they? That's what I will say. I'm not sure if they will or not. But yeah, it would do, because maybe I'm a romantic with football and I like these kind of things. But yeah, it would. What it's worth, I just don't think that will happen. Maybe that's what I'll tell myself if it happens. As well. Maybe I'll convince myself that a couple of years for loans for Delap, like a young Harry Kane. Like a young Harry Kane would be great for him. Then he'd be ready to essentially step in if Harry Kane does start to drop off. And if he doesn't, I guess once again we'll see what the future holds for Delap. But I'm aware these are relatively irrational things, so I don't think they're even fair as part of
Football's irrational.
It is, and that's why I love it. That's why I love it.
Yeah, but, it's not. You don't have to justify. You can hold great thing about football is you can hold any opinion, and to a greater or a lesser extent, you don't have to justify it. Somebody else might call you a knobhead, but in the end, you don't have to justify it. Football is emotional. It's not.
Well, that's the one thing good about what we do, Ahsan. Because we talk about football all the time, don't we? So we know our own opinions. And when you read, like, we're not the youngest of people, we're not the oldest people, we're not the youngest either. So you get confidence in your own opinions. And I guess there's a comfort from knowing that City are part of me wherever, that I have this drive for Manchester City to win things, but I'm relatively comfortable City win things on their own terms, if you know what I mean by that. And and I guess I'm fine if it's someone else, I'm not desperate for Manchester City to sign Kane. Because I guess I know life's going to be great either way is what I'm getting at. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I don't feel like it's Kane or nothing, And I guess when I'm there...
Is there a Premier League thing in this? Is there a Premier League thing in this? Is
Possibly, yeah.
Because I've found that whenever we get linked to a Premier League player, in general, the supporter base go, he's crap.
It's right.
What are we doing, right? And I just let me finish. Yeah. I would further that. I've seen Premier League players join Manchester City, and my feeling is that those players are given a far harder time than their foreign counterparts in terms of their performances and the amount of patience that they're given. And I wonder whether there isn't, and it would be completely normal in human nature, that basically it's one of those. You don't play that when you buy you don't play Dortmund every week, right? So you don't have the opportunity to get to know those players and build and generate feelings. And it goes, because, whenever you talk about Kane, I always think about the challenge that he put in on Sterling, right? And in that
I think about
moment,
the Ferner as well. I do that as well. I can't help it.
Yeah. In that moment, I don't think I hated a player more than Harry Kane. And honestly, I feel and have felt very strong negative emotions towards Harry Kane throughout the last few years. But what I realized is that ultimately I'm fickle, because the thing that matters more than anything else is winning. So in the end, when you're over there, you're a knobhead. But when you're here, you're my knobhead, and I love you and I'll protect you. And I think that that's the distinction for me, is that I find it easier to let go of any Premier League bias when I think about taking another club's players, because I just love the idea of taking their players. And, the Kane thing for me, hey, there's a really obvious example, and it's Van Persie going from Arsenal to United.
It's a cracking example.
Why he went, what it meant, and what happened the following season. And I think that, again, if I'm in a recruitment or a board meeting, right? And again, it's a question for you. So you're in the recruitment meeting, and you get told, so here's the situation, here's the lay of the land. Dortmund have basically closed the door on Haaland leaving this summer. On the flip side, Harry Kane wants to come, but if we don't do it, United are doing it. That he'll go there and they're going to do it. They're ready to pay the dough. He wants to come to us, but if we don't do it, he's going to go to United. I think those things become considerations. I think you begin to go then, do we want to be in a position where we're playing against Harry Kane for the next 3 or 4 years? Or do we want Harry Kane in our gang? And so I think that, it's a lot more. There's a hell of a lot more to be gained from signing Kane than from not signing him. And I would argue that if you don't sign Kane and he is on the market, then you potentially put yourself in a position where 3 months into next season, you're crying into your transfer list. So
no, you're right. There's a lot to unpack there, man. But someone said in the comments, I'm like a kid in the candy store, and that's as in. But you know what? It's because we are kids in the candy store, and that's exactly it, and that's the point I'm making. I'm doing that, and I admit and own this, because quite literally, that's what Man City are. We are that kid we've got a 10 quid, and we've got every single chocolate bar to choose from, and that's where Man City are. And I guess that's why I'm taking this decision. And in a way, it makes me sound principled and spoiled. But we have been spoiled, so we're going to be acting like the way.
You don't sound spoiled. You don't say that. Don't characterize yourself in that way, because we have to remember,
I'm relaxed with it for what it's worth. I'm relaxed with it because I guess the point I'm making is that Man City are brilliant. So I guess the point is, when Man City are brilliant, you can embrace that and you can be picky. I guess that's what I'm saying. But go back to what you're saying before about Premier League players, because I wrote some notes down, because I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I think people do it for a variety of reasons. And I often think people a mistaken difference of a player for thinking a player's crap, and there's a potential that they think there is indifferent usually, because you're often indifferent to things you're used to, right? And I think also Harry Kane, it's probably hard to be excited, by the way, and this is not Harry Kane's fault. It's probably hard to be excited by someone that you watch fail every single season. And Harry Kane doesn't fail, but Spurs fail. And it's very hard to separate those feelings. So we're not scared of Harry Kane when he plays for us, because we usually beat Spurs. That's not Kane's fault, but we do. I guess that doesn't then play into the Harry Kane mythos or whatever, So that's not really his fault. But I guess I understand why people feel indifferent about Harry Kane, because every week we watch Spurs be irrelevant and bottle it, and that then feeds into his reputation too. It's not fair, but I understand now how people go, probably think in the back of the mind subconsciously, why am I not excited by Kane? maybe he's crap, which is obviously not true. But I see how it happens, if that makes sense. And I think people confuse the idea of somebody crap with actually not interested in getting it. And you're right, by the way. Once you see someone there all the time, you do get used to the idea of watching. They're just not as exciting. And look at the energy around Haaland. And I've been guilty of this as well. But we all painted Haaland as this superhuman who's infallible and he can do anything. And then he played Man City and he was crap and didn't do anything largely. Like he was pretty quiet. He got assists. Don't get me wrong. He was all right, but he largely was just like Harry Kane when Man City plays him. Clearly a good player, but he couldn't do anything. So I guess the point I'm making, but no one's bothered because we don't watch Haaland every single week. Whereas we do watch Kane every single week and we're more aware of his failings or we're more used to people talking about him. And you can't be as excited, I guess, by a person that you hear about every single time because you get numb to it. And that's not 100%. The fans' fault. It's just life. That's how it is. So there's definitely a Premier League thing to it. You're also absolutely unequivocally spot on with the Van Persie thing. That was it's a very similar kind of transfer. It definitely cemented United's place, that United's title that season. I would argue maybe it's not quite as pressing for Man City as it was for United back then, but it's not a million miles off. So you're definitely right. It's a very similar comparison because I think City are much better than United were then in terms of the stranglehold on the league personally. Absolutely. But you're right. It would be that level and it would be that kind of transfer. And you can't underestimate as well the idea of just crushing your opponents and preventing someone else get them. As long as the other teams don't get Haaland, I'm pretty cool with that as well. So there's loads to unpack with these things. I mean, I would say I think everyone would agree that Haaland's probably going to be a success at Man City. Kane would be a success at Man City if he joins. Everyone would agree with that. Everyone should agree with that. If they're not, then
tell me if somebody disagrees with it in the chats.
People always do. People always will, man. I was just about to get to this, but we've got a super chat as well, which is very well timed. So Vishwash Afriya, great timing. It says, what's your opinion about Jesus swap for Kane? Obviously, there'll be money involved. But yeah, where are you at that, man? Do you think there's any deal that could work? Would Jesus be interested in going to Spurs? I mean, what kind of deal would it look like if it was that? What kind of money? Do you think there's anything in this?
So, firstly, from our point of view, obviously, I think that if Jesus is a player that they want, looking at where he is in the pecking order, that would be good. Yeah. Whether you use him in the Kane deal or you use him in the Haaland deal, if you can use him in a deal for a 9, and Guardiola feels that he's now expendable, then cool. We should definitely do that. The thing that I'd be really wary of is that Spurs have to make that call between we need money, we've got the Bank of England loans to pay, so we need the hard cash, and if we sell Harry Kane, we probably need to buy another player. I think swaps are difficult, but from Gabriel Jesus's point of view, if that is offered to him, he should take that because I think he would play every single week at Spurs. And I agree. In the run-up to the World Cup next year, he's just got to play. It's weird how there's been so much focus on Sterling that Jesus's fall from grace has flown well under the radar. But he's somewhere around 5th choice as false 9, right? Which is, for him, should be deeply, deeply concerning with a World Cup coming up in a year. And to be honest, for me, I feel I don't like hoarding players. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't like to hoard players, right? I think that there comes a point where a player plays or he's got to move. You can't have Pep said it before that, high quality benches and squads. You can't have them forever. There has to be a churn because those players, they can't not play. Yeah. They just careers stagnate.
Squad players last 2 years. That's my theory. The last 2 years, squad players. You get 2 seasons out of them, then they get unhappy. Look at who's the most Danilo, someone like that's a good example of players like they want to be around, or even they're around for a little bit, but then they want to go because why wouldn't they? Because they're usually very good footballers. So I agree with that. No, I agree entirely. You can't keep them forever. You get rare examples, but
I think with Jesus, I think it's already been a year too long. I think that obviously he didn't know how this season would pan out for him. I think that the Madrid games, his performance in those 2 Madrid games maybe gave us the impression that he had a big future at the club again. But I feel as though that when it came to the crunch this season and Guardiola had to begin to have like a clear focus on players that he trusted, Jesus is just too far down the pecking order. So with all that in mind, I think that from his point of view, if a club like Spurs came along and said, we want you to come, and City were happy to do that, I'd do that if I were him.
Yeah, probably.
Would you be happy with
agree.
that?
Yeah, I probably would actually. I mean, I think presuming it knocked, I would probably. It's one of those things, by the way. If a swap happens, it isn't going to be like a great deal in terms of it'll knock 60 million off. It won't. It'll knock 25, 30 million off. That's how these things usually work. And swaps are rare for what it's worth. And I think they've been popularized by FIFA or Football Manager or whatever, but swap deals just don't really happen very often, and for good reason, because you need the demands of multiple parties and multiple players all pulling the same way, and that rarely happens. I mean, I've seen, for example, people in the comments mention Sterling. Sterling ain't going to go to Spurs. Like, don't be so naive, people. Like, Sterling is not one to go to. I know some people turn around and go, yeah, but at the moment his form's not good enough, so that's all he is. But Sterling is not going to go for a team outside the Champions League. So straight away, regardless of whether any of us want
going anywhere.
I agree.
It's not going anywhere.
No, I agree. What I will say, though, regardless of what any of us think, the idea that Sterling will never go to Spurs, it isn't going to happen. So just get that out of your head straight away is my point, because it's just not going to happen. Someone said something like Jesus plus 80 million for Kane. I think you'd be looking at Jesus plus 90 million, maybe 95 million for Kane, potentially.
You know what? I think that's more or less what I would have it at, somewhere between... I think what City would love to do is get Harry Kane without saying that they broke the British transfer record, right? And the question is, what is the British transfer record? Is it the reported 85 million that United paid for Pogba, or is it the Football League's 120 million pounds that they paid for Pogba? And I think that Man City would love to get Kane somewhere in between those two figures, so they can point at the headline on Pogba and go, we haven't broken the British transfer record because Pogba cost 120. And I think that that's where somebody like Gabby Jesus might come in. I completely agree with you. Like, in general, the valuation of the player going
in the swap,
is generally lower. The one thing I would say is that all this creative accounting that big clubs do now, it's beyond me. So, for example, that Pjanic Arthur swap just made no sense on paper. And
dodgy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm quite reliably informed that in the Cancelo Danilo swap, that City just wanted to buy Cancelo, and the fee that they were quoted was 60 million, right? So City turned around and went, we're not going to pay more than 30 million euros for Cancelo, but we'll give you Danilo going the other way.
Yeah.
We don't care how you value him at whatever you want. So I imagine that we're into the realms of crazy spec now, but like I can envisage that City would go to Spurs, for example, and say, okay, look, so our headline here is 85 million. We're not going to pay more than 85 million pounds in hard cash. However, you can have Gabriel Jesus going the other way, and you can value him however you want. And then Daniel Levy can go, I've done a deal worth 145 million pounds because I've just signed Brazil's number 9.
Number 9, yeah.
And I've got 80 million pound or 85 million pound for Harry Kane. So that's how I would see a swap like that working.
Yeah, and for the reason someone said don't undervalue Jesus, to be honest, not. I think the problem is when you do a swap deal and you're trying to put another player in it, you've got a weaker hand straight away because you're saying this player isn't. We don't want him anymore, and he's not good enough for us, and he's good. Essentially, you're underplaying. You're saying you're willing to get rid of someone, and that straight away that just knocks so much money off their value because the very definition of what you're doing is to downplay someone. So you haven't got a bargaining position, basically, is what I'm saying.
No.
So that's the reason why swap players are always sometimes just half of the absolute market value, because you sold Gabriel Jesus, literally sold him, someone would go 60 million or something like that, but then if you put him in a swap, he's probably worth half that, because that's just how these deals work. And Big Johnny, big love for the super chat, says it hurts because I love Gabby, but he definitely needs more game time. But if it means the lap can trade with a natural talent like Kane, then I'm for it. You're right, mate. Gabby, Gabri's he's such a talented player. He's not found himself yet. I would say that personally. He's not found who he is, and maybe he needs responsibility because he's always felt like the maybe guy at Man City. Like maybe he'll take over from Aguero. Maybe he'll be. He's never quite found his niche in Manchester City side, and it's not for lack of talent.
I said on the pod yesterday, I think Kevin De Bruyne leaving Chelsea is a really good example for Gabriel Jesus because I believe in Gabriel Jesus as a footballer.
So do I.
I don't know if 9 is his position, but I definitely believe in him as a footballer. And I think that he's got a really high ceiling, and I think that he can go somewhere where they have total faith in him and he can explode. And I think that it's not, with Gabby, he shouldn't be looking at the big move. He should be looking at the move to get the big move. He should be looking at
sensible move.
Going somewhere for 2 years where the football is played in the right way. You've got the right type of coach. He believes in you. The club have faith in you. You will be so important for them that you'll feel that. You know what I mean? Like you'll feel that.
If I was him,
responsibility.
I would take a slightly lower 4-year contract. I aim for 2 great seasons, then you're in a good position to try and get a move if you want to, or not just to sign a new contract. But that's what I would do if I was Gabriel Jesus. But either way, I would not be surprised if Gabriel Jesus is here next season because Pep likes him. I wouldn't be surprised.
Totally.
But either way, and you're right, Johnny. If the lad gets a trade for someone like Kane, that can only be a positive if he does. Mate, we've been chatting for 50 minutes about Harry Kane.
You said 20 minutes. You said 20 minutes when we started.
Oh, shit. There's another question as well at the end. AY just said, big love, mate. Says, I think the main question is, will Haaland choose City if there are 5-6 comes after him, like Gabby on the wing, by the way? I think he would. But I guess the question is if it's going to be Haaland now. I think he would, personally. I think Haaland would choose Man City. But
I
will it
think
happen
it's about this summer. I think it's about this summer. I think that City aren't prepared to wait a year and therefore have done this well in advance because we've been talking about Haaland for months and City said back in January, our priority this summer is to sign Haaland. So City have done this well in advance. Everybody knows what their needs are, but what they're not going to do is put the entire football club on pause because Mino can't engineer a move or because Haaland wants to do another year in Dortmund. I think they'll just go, okay, fine. This isn't the moment right now for you to come here. Hopefully in 3 years or in 4 years or in 5 years, we can revisit it.
Indeed, man. Indeed. Excuse me. A little bit of a cough today. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm all right. It's a minor cough. Everyway, guys, I think we'd all agree that whatever happens. We'll sign the striker, and I do believe and trust in Manchester City's transfer process. I just do. It's got us where we are right now, and we've got the best coach in the world. So Kane comes in, Haaland comes in, or Andre Silva, or Lukaku, whatever. They're going to score loads of goals, and they're going to be brilliant. I really genuinely believe that. Because we basically won it right now, won the league without a striker. So imagine just a good striker. What it's going to do, it's going to be absolutely incredible. Damn you, Baraf, for another question. Not about the current form. Jesus is a far better team player than Sterling. Suits Pep style better. Won't be a loss if Sterling is swapped for Kane. That's a big controversial opinion. I'm not sure I necessarily agree, mate. You're entitled to your opinion, but
I can't unpack that. I need a whole podcast to unpack that.
Yes, I agree, mate. You're entitled to your opinion. I think Sterling has shown more than enough times that he suits Pep's system. I'm just going to put it out there. I think 100 goals, whatever it's been. I don't know how it's been. It's something stupid. I think that's the proof there, mate, to be honest. And I think if anyone's going to stay at Manchester City, it'll be Sterling and not Jesus. But either way, guys, you're all legends. Ahsan is a legend. Go and follow the 9320 podcast in the description below at 9320 on Twitter for loads of quality content. Harry Kane could be a Manchester City player. Haaland could be a Manchester City player. City are in the Champions League final. Once again, as ever, as I keep saying, and I'm going to keep saying it, this is the good shit. Enjoy it because it doesn't get better than this. Guys, like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Go and follow 9320. See you later.
On the Blues!